Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, and now 20th Century Fox presents the greatest comedy event of the 20th century, Mel Brooks Silent Movie. Starring Mel Brooks, Marty Feldman, Dom DeLuise, it's Mel's most magnificent madness. Silent Movie.
Oh, blow it out your ass, Howard.
Hello and welcome back to Almost Cult Classics, the podcast. My name is Joe Ramone, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host Ryan Lancello.
Howdy, folks.
We are doing a planned Part 1 retrospective on the career of Mel Brooks, with our spotlight on Silent Movie from 1976. Now, this is one that I think originally the plan was let's just do Life Stinks, which is considered far and above to be the worst bomb of Mel Brooks' career. It's probably the most negatively reviewed, although there's a couple we're going to talk about in this episode that I actually think are quite worse. But so I was reading his biography recently, his autobiography, and he got up to his film career and was going through them one by one each chapter and got to Silent Movie, and I was just like, I don't think I've ever seen this. And it seems like an interesting idea.
It seems like an interesting idea. Sure it does, because what, a silent movie hadn't been made since almost City Lights, right?
I think so. That was one of the, because towards the end of the silent era, they were doing things like synchronized sound effects and stuff like that. So it wasn't silent in the sense of like, there was a live orchestra. The movies were going to theaters with soundtracks and that type of thing. But and we'll talk a little about the making of it because there is some complicated history behind it, who came up with the idea, how they arrived at what they arrived at. But yeah, this was my first time watching it all the way through, and I know it was yours, and you've been teasing me all week leading up to this recording.
I haven't said a word about my thoughts.
So please, let's get into it.
Well, when we started this, like you said, we were going to do kind of a two-part retrospective on Mr. Brooks. And I realized, I was like, oh, great, I was excited. I was like, I'd never seen the producers all the way through. I realized I'd never really seen Young Frankenstein. There was that 12 Chairs movie he does. It's had an interesting premise I was excited to see. And Silent Movie, because I was like, I like Silent Movie, so I was like it. This is going to be the most depressing episode for me to do because I realized Mel Brooks stinks, dude. And Silent Movie it's easily one of the worst pieces of shit movies I've ever seen in my life. It might be the worst movie I personally have ever seen. I fucking loathe this movie. I fucking hate this movie on such a metaphysical level. He's lucky he had all those other writers on Blazing Saddles. You brought that up a couple episodes ago, and it stuck with me. I was like, oh, Mel Brooks, wow, legend, right? And you were like, well, Blazing Saddles, he had a lot of help on that. He had a lot of help on that.
Well, look, and I'm not going to sit here and say Mel Brooks sucks. I think that
I'm being hyperbolic. I'm going to try to be not as vitriolic this episode.
But I'll tell you one thing. So I talked about that. If you have ever listened to Mel Brooks, he just has a very kind of dude, because if you've been in Hollywood this long, the dude's been making movies in the scene for 60 years at this point, if not longer.
For sure.
So you become a little diluted in terms of how these movies came about, how you made them. He does his anecdotes are hacky and not truthful now. And that book, as great as it is, you can tell he skates around the truth, which is
the autobiography.
It's it's a lot of showbiz anecdotes where things are conveniently moved around for the place of the story, which I get. But I have sitting in front of me, which I'm going to be using, is this book that came out a few years ago called Mel Brooks FAQ by Dale Sherman. This is a series of books they do FAQ, and it's a non-biased kind of look at these films. Where in the book, it's let's tell fun stories about how great they were, and I'm glad he has that relationship with his movies that he can look back on them. But when we do this podcast, we want to look into why these movies didn't work, what went into them, and why no one's really talking about them today.
Yeah, and look, when I go Mel Brooks sucks, I don't hate Mel Brooks. I have a lot of respect for Mel Brooks. He got a lot of important movies produced.
Brooks films.
Yeah, exactly. David Lynch and stuff. I mean, the guy's he seems like a good guy all around and stuff. I just think he's shockingly lazy. He's a lazy filmmaker, man, and he fucking rests on these gags that, I'm like, dude, yeah, maybe they were fresh when Sid Caesar had you writing for shows. But they fucking suck now.
Again, in this book that I have in front of me, there's a whole list of gags in Silent Movie that are essentially recycled from the previous 4 movies. That it's not even these gags would repeat. It's they came before already. There's a lot of repeats and stuff he had done, and I think that I think what motivated us, especially kind of that will be a good segue, we talked about in our last episode, The Kid Brother, which was a Harold Lloyd silent movie that you really enjoyed. So there was a lot of opportunity to talk about good silence. And when I was watching this movie, I was like, fuck, man, some of those great silence, which we're going to talk about in a separate episode. We're going to talk about Keaton, Lloyd, and Chaplin. But they prioritize story over gags. And this movie, it's just kind of like gags over story. It's just like there's a lot of gags that don't tie into anything. They're just there to be there.
Whatever story exists is so insulting to the viewer. Because it's barely there. Guess what it is? We're getting ahead of ourselves here, but they're making a silent movie, which right away that's just like such an easy like cheat. You're making a movie about like it's not. It's built in. You know, you can show cameras and stuff. It takes so much like a guesswork and like fuck ups. You can fuck up. Not only that, you're making a Mel Brooks movie where the fuck up is the joke sometimes. Oh, the boom's in the shot. Like, look, I love the Zucker brothers movies. I think the early Wayans brothers parodies are hilariously funny. Not a story there.
Well, we're going to talk about, again, because we're doing eventually another episode of Mel Brooks that will, Up to Life Stinks, that'll leave over 2 movies.
I can't wait. I cannot wait to do the second half of the retrospective on Mel Brooks because the movies just get better, right?
I actually...
Yeah.
Let's listen. But what I'm saying is that leaves over 2 movies, which are Robin Hood Men in Tights and Dracula Dead and Loving It. I had never seen Robin Hood Men in Tights, so we're going to do that on our Patreon show this week, patreon.com/almostcultclassics. But
Tell your friends.
That movie to me is insulting. I won't get more into it.
Yeah, we
that
will.
to me felt like
I'll
a
tease my
Wayans
reaction.
brothers, Zucker brothers movie. It felt like I'll say it's like Year One syndrome, where like all the actors and performers didn't have the courage to tell a director this isn't really working.
You're dead on.
And it's excluding like 2 gags, I chuckle, but I'm like, why did like 90s kids love that movie? And I had just it never caught on for me, and I watched it and was like, it felt like that. Do you remember that movie with, is it Lloyd Bridges called Mafia, where it's just like
Jay Moore.
It's
saw it in the theater
and it's like
loved it.
But I'm saying it feels like
I was a kid. I was probably 11.
Exactly. It felt like the same type of jokes, and not only that, like it's so funny. And the chapter of the book that talks about Robin Hood Men in Tights is called "Well, It Worked in Blazing Saddles" because that's an actual line of dialogue in that movie.
Once they start towards the end of that, like, hey, remember Blazing Saddles? Remember Black Bart?
You didn't like Rabbi Tuckman. But let's backtrack a little bit here. So this movie basically comes after Mel Brooks had 2 enormous hits, which was Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein for Fox. Kind of the studio allowed him to do this. Like they didn't care at this point because those movies were such huge hits. And Young Frankenstein, you know, that was a hard to get made because him and Gene Wilder wanted it to be shot in black and white. They were very instrumental that it can't be converted after the fact because you're going to lose a lot of framing. And so after doing that, you know, that was a big risk and it paid off for the studio. So they were kind of willing to let him do whatever he wanted. And Silent Movie was the result of that. But it actually came about through other writers, and he was brought on board later, which was the case with both of those movies. Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles were both the product of another writer that Mel Brooks came on board to. So, but you watched, you know, a lot of the early Mel Brooks stuff you hadn't seen, right?
Yeah. Like I said, I would always catch the Springtime for Hitler sequence in Producers. I never saw the whole movie. So I finally got to sit down and watch that. It's fine. It's funny-ish.
Yeah, I think
Gene Wilder's awful in it, which I'm trying to goad you here a little bit. He stinks.
No, but I think that's the character. I don't know if it's, you know,
one note and boring and annoying.
Is that the writing though, or is that the, you know?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's the performance is it's annoying me. Like, look, this is where it gets subjective. I am annoyed by that shit. Some people find it very funny. So don't listen to me. People are annoyed by me. I'm annoyed by me. I get it. But like him with the blankie and the screeching, I don't like that pitch he hits. And it's like nails on a chalkboard, and it's annoying. And it's like, does he ever get his balls in that movie? Kind of does, I guess. He goes along with the plot.
At the end, yeah, when that courtroom scene, he kind of like, you know, comes around.
Look, Sarah Mustel's very funny in it, banging all the old women. It's funny. It's a funny gag. Even that kind of is just like, yeah. I'll tell you what, this movie suffers from, what year is it?
68 is the producers, or 67, I'm sorry.
It suffers from that, his direction in this movie is awful. everything looks cheap and flat and just it's not great. There's no sense to framing really.
Well, they had to scrape together I'm not defending it in the sense that
go ahead.
They scraped together the budget for it. No one wanted to make this movie. He was essentially not a director at this point in time. He directed a few sketches on Your Show of Shows with Sid Caesar.
So yeah, I'm sorry. He gets a pass. Mm-hmm. Like I'm just saying. Like I'm like it almost looks like it looks a little stagey.
And entirely.
And whatever. It kind of works, but like there's like I feel like there's like 2 sets. Yeah, they're not really doing much. It's a lot of hammy, over-the-top stuff, but it's funny. Look, Kenneth Mars as the Nazi, super
that's
funny.
Great.
The babies, like that's funny. Fucking the star of the show is Dick Shawn.
Oh yeah, he's great.
As what is it, Lorenzo Saint Dubois?
Yeah,
he's the weird early hipster,
right?
Almost, and he plays Hitler, and it's extremely funny. He's really good at it, and it's funny. I'm watching the movie, and I'm like, wait a second. Is this the guy who I find hysterical from It's a Mad, Mad, Mad? And it's him. Of course, it's him.
Of course it's him.
Mama, I'm coming for you.
Yeah, he's great. And
what a weirdo.
One of the look, I like the movie because it's just kind of concise and the ending's kind of bleak. The musical is, and you have to change a lot of the stuff around when you adapt stuff to musical. It's a lot more optimistic in the end. But one of the crimes of it is getting rid of that Dick Shawn character.
What?
Yeah, the Hitler role is cast. It's Franz originally is going to play Hitler, and then he has an accident, and it goes to Roger Debris is going to plays Hitler. So it's still funny because he plays it like camp and like kind of like So it works.
It is funny too. I mean, in the sense, if you want to look at it as like a relic of time, it's like you're openly making fun of the Queen. Like theater director, and he is like you said, campy, gay as possible. And then he's got his little major domo. I forget the characters.
Carmen Gia.
Carmen Gia, the car.
Played by, I'm not even going to attempt his name, Andreas Vustinas?
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Something close, yeah.
Greek names are tough, and he pops up in the 12 Chairs.
He does. He's also in...
Very interesting-looking fellow.
Yeah, he looks like...
But they both play a character... Like, no one's writing this character. They have, like, the mincing, almost sinister gaze. Like, it's funny. It is funny. Like I said, Kenneth Mars, what was it, Franz Liebchen. Super over the top, but it works.
Yeah, we've talked about Kenneth Mars before because of Malcolm in the Middle. He was... Do you remember when in the later seasons when Francis worked at, like, the ranch or whatever it was, he was the guy that owned the ranch, Francis.
Oh, maybe. I checked that one those later
but
seasons.
He was always great. He's one of those... He always played, like, German and, like, Austrian guys, but despite not being that. But, yeah, really funny guy. He's in the Peter Bogdanovich... I always forget the name of that movie.
What's Up, Doc?
Yes, What's Up, Doc? Yeah, he's great in that. And I think that's how... There's a lot of casting similarities between Bogdanovich and Mel Brooks. In his book, he likened that to... He was such a big fan of what Bogdanovich was doing. So a lot of the same cast members and a lot of great... I love some of these 70s like character actors in comics and people that weren't really getting much work that are in these movies because they come up, and just, again, there's some Woody Allen actors. A lot of these... guys were in similar movies, but
I take it back. I feel like I shit on producers a little too hard there. It is good, and it's funny. The concept is funny.
The concept is just great.
Some of it is just it's a little amateurish at times. And like you said, he was almost like directing his first feature. It's no small feat. I give him a little leeway on that one. And even the Gene Wilder thing, I'll back off on a little bit. It is an annoying character. There's no real payoff there for me.
Well, it's another, and again, I'm going to play devil's advocate with you and all of this just because the world and these people are so familiar to me as I've read so many biographies, but like this was also Gene Wilder's kind of first starring role in a film. So there's a lot of forgiveness I have towards it that, I can see how someone otherwise wouldn't. But it has its problems. Don't get me wrong. Pacing wise,
the pacing's a little rough at times.
And like you said, I think Mel Brooks originally envisioned it as a novel, and then it was a stage play, and then it became a movie. So it plays like a stage play. That's why when he came back to it years later and did that, it worked.
I assumed it kind of was one.
Yeah.
So it's definitely worthwhile. It's a good flick. It's funny.
We're gonna come back to.
I mean, it's like I wanted to ask you this. Mm-hmm. So the classic line from the movie is during the play where they're singing the song "Springtime," and it's like, "Don't be stupid, be a smarty. Come and join the Nazi party." And it's
Mel Brooks,
dubbed in. Do you think that actor's pissed?
I don't think so, because I think in every, like, even in the musical, it's dubbed in.
They dub it in. It's a hilarious line.
Yeah, I like what's his name, the great Bill Hickey, as the bar patron, the drunk.
Which one was he? Oh, yes.
I'm getting his name right?
I think so. Yeah, he's just sitting there drinking with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
William
is good.
Hickey, who have we talked about him? Maybe not. I've talked about him on my videos because he always played like a guy who thought was like 75 years old, but he just looked
alive now.
No, he died.
No, he's alive.
He's still out
there. Same, yeah.
He looks like Death in Mouse Hunt, and he was only like 68, I feel like.
But he had that look forever.
Yeah. He's great. Yeah, we're going to come back to a lot of these characters, but I do want to point out, too, a big part of the producers is the soundtrack composed by John Morris, who does a lot of Mel Brooks movies following this. Great composer. Mel Brooks really likes this. This is, like, we're going to talk about it because you think it hurts some of these movies, but he kind of loves the writer's room mentality, and I think that's because of the Sid Caesar stuff. And I could be wrong. I believe this is the only movie he wrote solo in his filmography that he directed, and
he should have tried it a little more.
I would have loved that because, like,
he wrote 12 Chairs too. I mean, it was an adaptation.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, as far as like original, start to finish.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, The Producers is his first movie. It's not really a hit. A lot of people don't realize that today. It kind of flops.
Not initially. No,
yeah.
Not at all.
And so then he has to wait even, a few more years to get his next movie made, which is The 12 Chairs, which is a movie I had never seen. You didn't even know existed, I feel like.
I wasn't sure about. No, I didn't. It's interesting concept. It's based on a short story by Ilfin Petrov. They were kind of like Russian writers, I guess in the Soviet era. And it's about basically, the revolution happens. This kind of member of the bourgeoisie, they come in and what's the word? I mean, they take your shit. That's what they do in a communist Soviet republic. But they come in, this is for the state now. So they take a bunch of his furniture, all that shit, and he becomes some dumb village functionary for the organ of the state or whatever. Finds out on the deathbed, was it his mother-in-law?
His mother-in-law's deathbed, yeah.
She hid a bunch of $500,000 or whatever of jewelry in the backs of one of the chairs. Now we travel across Soviet Russia looking for the chairs. That's the story. Great premise. And then, I haven't read the story by Ilfin Petrov, but I think it plays up kind of the weirdness and all like the dumb bureaucracies and fucked up shit in the Soviet Union.
Isn't that most of like Russian literature of that era?
Kind of, yeah. But like my problem with this movie was it doesn't really lean into that at all. It is kind of just them like, yep, we're looking for the chairs. That's kind of it.
It also it's been made a bunch of times into stuff before this premise of that similar.
Right.
But I was talking to you after I watched this. I was like, can you recommend some Russian literature? Because like I had no frame of reference into how these stories go. And I told you maybe not a long time ago, a few months ago, I tried to read Notes from Underground. And I was like, what the fuck is this? I
haven't read that. It's Dostoevsky, and I think it's just an angry tirade, right?
And it's just I read like half of it in like a sitting, and I was like, I don't know what I've just read, so I'm going to stop. It's thin.
Oh yeah,
I told you, I would love to get more into.
I told you, I think Master and Margarita would probably be good for you.
That's when it's a little bit thicker, but I feel like everyone seems to think it's a lot more easier to follow and comic in tone, and
for sure. Yeah.
But I liked this, and the reason I asked you too is because I read Mel Brooks's book. I'm reading Woody Allen's book. I've read Billy Connolly's book. Like all these great comic minds I love cite Russian literature as their favorites, And so I'm like, there's got to be something there. If all these guys are, praising it, I would love to check more out of it. And even some of these guys, I would love to see more of their. There's one book they wrote about their experience in America, supposedly really funny.
Yeah, I was looking into their corpus or whatever you want to call it. That would be good.
But yeah, this one just it didn't really work for me.
It should have been more. It seems too happy almost. Where it's like, I think you're missing the point of living under an oppressive, kind of thing. It didn't really seem like that. Now, it's early in that, revolution or whatever the fuck you want to call it. But it just does shit. Like, he does this a lot, and I absolutely hate this. It's the sped up shot where characters are running and we're speeding. And I'm like, I fucking hate it, dude. It works in Benny Hill, and that's about it. Like, I don't like it.
I want to touch on this when we come back to Silent Movie, because he does it there quite a bit.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does.
But
for extended sequences.
I do think the cast in this is great.
This is good. Frank Langella's good.
Yeah, like he used to be like quite the hunk, like back in the early.
Super hunky in this.
And he's one of these guys now that's been fired from something. Did you read about that?
I skimmed it. I don't care.
We talked about when I watched Bram Stoker's Dracula. I watched his Dracula adaptation. It was just oozing with this sexual energy. It's weird, and to see him in this and see the brooding.
He's young,
yeah,
and he's that real rakish kind of character. He's a kind of a con man, and it's a great character. And there's not enough.
Yeah,
cons. Do more cons and shit. And then you got the Dom DeLuise character, which funny premise. I think it's kind of squandered because he's this Orthodox priest. Mm-hmm. Who, in her deathbed confession, he also hears about the Jews. So now he's on his own quest to find the chairs, and they bump into each other, blah, blah, blah. Hilarity ensues.
We're going to come back to him quite a bit, because obviously he's in Silent Movie, and a few other of these Mel Brooks movies he's in. Robin Hood, like I said, later he'll be in that. But I think this is Mel Brooks' first performance in one of his own films.
Yeah, which, meh.
Well, we're again...
So annoying.
We're going to talk...
So annoying.
More as we go on. But the 12 Chairs is also a bomb. It doesn't, obviously...
I couldn't imagine this movie had it. I think they were probably trying to go for that Fiddler on the Roof audience.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
And I told you, I saw a movie that did this so much better. Love and Death. Woody Allen's Love and Death. Hilarious. Just all around, captures a lot of what I think he was going for in that. And it ties into a little bit because as I'm doing research on Silent Movie... The original writer wanted to take it to either Mel Brooks or Woody Allen and ended up with Mel Brooks. So kind of interesting. The two of their careers overlap quite a bit for Sid Caesar and stuff like that. But one of them definitely goes one direction and one of them goes another. And so
one of them became an actual filmmaker. He just refuses to direct sometimes. And I see this with comedy guys. It's have a little fucking vision.
Again, I think it has more to do with you kind of lose your edge, and also none of the actors have the courage to say this isn't working.
You're probably right.
But following that is Blazing Saddles, which I actually watched this with you for the first time you had seen it, and it was a lot of fun. Again, I think there's some pacing issues in this movie. I think there's a couple jokes that don't land, but I do largely think this is a movie that rests on that writer's room mentality and having those great writers involved.
It's his best movie. Mm-hmm. It's hilarious. It's really funny. And I mean simple stuff like a lot of it comes down to it's not only the writing, the jokes are so funny, it's that they're performed perfectly. He's saying the sheriff is near. That's so funny. Yeah. And you get it's the performance because you got the prospector. The sheriff's near. He already talks funny. So
the bell's ringing. It's just
perfect. It's perfect. And then it's a really really fucking funny movie. I can't.
That's all you have
There's
to say?
not much to say about Blazing Saddles. It holds up. It totally holds up.
Because you haven't seen it since that.
No, I watched it again.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. I was doing research on it, just, reading between the lines and, figuring out some behind the scenes stuff. It's so funny to me how accidental Gene Wilder ending up in this movie was, because they took it to so many people. Originally Johnny Carson.
That would have been good.
Who was just
are we
that's your Bob Hope.
Are we black?
He was like, I can't do it. I'm not an actor.
No.
That's what he said. And then they were like, all right, well, let's go the old washed up Western star. So John Wayne, who famously turned it down and said he'll be the first in line. Gig Young, Robert Mitchum, Dan Daly. Eventually they come back to the Gig Young,
who's the one they all praise at one point?
Randolph Scott.
You'll
do it for Randolph Scott.
But little things, everyone in the town I noticed on this watch is Johnson.
Yeah.
I did not.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, Howard Johnson.
And they're all.
And not only that, we talked about this in our last episode, where you wanted the camaraderie of the townspeople in A Million Ways to Die in the West. Here, they're great. I mean, David Helston.
They're all so funny, all of them.
And again, a lot of there's some overlap with Bogdanovich casting. Mm-hmm. Madeline Kahn. What's his name? I think excluding Mel Brooks, the only other cast member that's still alive is Burton Gilliam, who is in a lot of Bogdanovich stuff. He's the real sleazy guy in Paper Moon, the hotel. He works in the hotel desk.
Yeah.
He's actually on Cameo, dressed in his Blazing Saddles character. I'm just happy someone that Mel Brooks knows is still alive, because all of these people are dead. All these people, you're looking at, you're dead. But in Blazing Saddles is
It's not Charles Durning. Who is the fucking guy in Blazing Saddles?
That's what you said. It's David Huddleston.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I thought you said yeah. He's great in it.
Yeah. I'll blow it out your ass, Howard.
God damn, there's one part. What was it really? Something really stuck out in Blazing Saddles. I thought was really, really funny. Dock that chink of day's pay for napping on the job. Like, that wouldn't be funny if he didn't deliver it as funnily as he does.
That's Burt and Gilliam that says that line.
Is it?
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's
Yes,
Slim
it is.
Pickens.
It's not.
Oh, fuck, you're right, it is. God damn it.
But he just went, what in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here?
It's good stuff.
Yeah. We touched on him with 1941. Obviously, he plays the Christmas tree guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. He's always great. Even in, Dr. Strangelove, I love him. And yeah, the camaraderie of the townspeople in this movie, John Hillerman, really, really just funny. The preacher, yeah, Harvey Korman, everyone's great.
Oh, that's what I wanted to ask you. Is there a joke beyond it sounds like Hedy Lamarr?
No.
It is,
That's
because
just
it's
the
really
joke.
funny that it's
Yeah.
Headley.
Headley.
It's hilarious, but I'm like, what is the joke
That's the
here?
joke. It just sounds like Hedley Lamarr.
Dude, that's enough sometimes.
Yeah.
That is enough sometimes. And that's where Mel Brooks, he gets away with it, his lazy shit. Because sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Why am I laughing at this? Because it's funny, because it sounds like his name, or her, you know what I mean? Like, but he leans on that shit way, way too much, in my opinion. He thinks that everything's funny, because it's like, no, dude, it's not always funny.
Well, so up to this point, we've touched on these three movies. Arguably, there's like winky in some of them at the audience, but it's mostly kept at bay in a way where it's not distracting.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads into Young Frankenstein, which this is why I busted out all the books here, because I'm trying to think, like, oh, by the way, Blazing Saddles, huge hit. Biggest hit of Mel Brooks' career. From this point on in his career, Mel Brooks can do whatever he wants. And
I've said this probably a billion times on the show, and I'll say it a billion times more, because anyone listening, don't get scared if you have an idea, because this movie could be made today. It could be made more ruthless, and it would make even more money. You have to have the fucking balls to say, no, this is funny, and I'm going to do it. But be funny.
Yeah.
Don't just be dumb and a dickhead. Be funny. Because, I mean, this movie is ruthless, and it's fucking, everyone finds it funny, as they should.
right.
Because it's funny.
Oh yeah, it still holds up because of that. And I think everyone, like you said, I think people are just scared to try. You can make this movie today.
You can 100% do it, but, be funny. So I want to ask you this.
Yes.
What am I missing with Young Frankenstein?
Well, and I'm gonna.
Did not care for this movie. No, Ed. No.
Young Frankenstein, I think it's Mel Brooks' best looking movie.
It's a great looking movie. It looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
He finally directed a little bit. It looks really good. I'll give him that, man. It looks fucking great.
Yeah, so I'll say this is what I'll say about Young Frankenstein. That's why I was in Mel Brooks' book. He, again, showbiz anecdote. They're on the set of Blazing Saddles, and Gene Wilder's writing something on a notepad, and he says, "What's that?" Didn't happen that way. It was 100% Gene Wilder had this idea and called Mel Brooks and tried to get him to direct it because he wanted to, spice the package up. And Gene Wilder's agent had just signed to represent Peter Boyle and Marty Feldman, so it kind of just, the pieces fell together. And as far as I know, it was, Mel Brooks shares the screenplay credit with Gene Wilder, but it was mostly Gene Wilder who was writing it, and Mel Brooks would come over at night, and they would have tea, biscuits, and tea, and argue and change some things around. But for the most part, it was 100%. The idea began with him. He kind of wrote it. I think the movie, a lot of the comedy rests on his complete sincerity in how he performs the role. That being said, yeah, there is a lot of. I still think Blazing Saddles is funnier. I think it has way more laughs. It's paced a lot quicker.
Yes.
Yeah.
First of all, they almost play it too straight.
That's the point.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's not supposed to be a parody.
It's a half-assed Frankenstein movie. Really, it's not. When they're putting on the Ritz.
What are you talking about? Half-assed? No, it is. I'm not arguing with you on that.
No, it's like a weak. It's like a watered-down Frankenstein story with some jokes thrown in, kind of. Like they do the whole thing. Like, it's not funny. It's just, I'm watching a Frankenstein movie that's not that good. That's what I felt like.
I'm in agreement with you that I think Blazing Saddles is superior, and I think a lot of people rank Young Frankenstein.
Forget about Blazing Saddles.
I know, but I'm saying, I think the genius of Young Frankenstein is just how subtle the humor can be and how nuanced. It's not like that. I don't think it's a perfect movie. Don't get me wrong.
I'm willing to give it another shot because it's Young Frankenstein. It's got a lot of pedigree. It is funny. It has its moments. I think it's... I was stunned watching it. I was like, this is it?
There's a couple of really rough editing transitions and zooms after the fact that don't quite work for me. A lot of
there were a couple weird.
There's a couple weird ones.
What the fuck was that?
The dick humor doesn't quite work for me in the way that it might have back then, where it's just like, Frankenstein's well hung, and then Dr. Frankenstein in the transfusion inherits the monster's libido.
I remember, to what you were saying about the apocryphal origin story of this. I heard it was like Mel Brooks tells it, I think, like Gene Wilder comes up to me. He's like, hey, I want to do a Frankenstein movie. And Mel Brooks is like, meh. And he's like, well, yeah, but I want to do it like Frankenstein, like, hates his family and doesn't want to be, like, connected with them. And he's like, now that's funny.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not. So their original thing was like, okay.
Can I say this to you?
Please, shut me up.
This might be a little bit... You have to understand, and I haven't seen all of them, but there were quite a few of those original Universal Frankenstein movies. And each time they dealt with a grandson, a son, coming back to Transylvania, picking up the mantelpiece.
Okay, it's kind of amusing then.
Yeah.
You gave me
but
context.
That's of the time. These were common movies. They played a lot. I mean, there's Son of Frankenstein is a movie. That's the title of one of those movies. Bride of Frankenstein. It starts to get to a point where it's his son, and then, it drags on and on.
That makes so much more sense to me now. Because I'm like, that's not that amusing. I'm like, yeah, his family was fucked up. Why wouldn't he want to be?
In the context of this is what this movie is meant to parody, it's more of that incestuous kind of relationship that the Frankenstein family in those movies had.
Tell you what, man, Peter Boyle, who I love, just... I'm like, I got to turn this... I wanted to turn it off. It was so annoying.
Philadelphia guy.
It's not funny.
What about...
young, weird Gene Hackman, who looks old.
Isn't that great, though?
It's so weird.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a second. It took me like 4 minutes, I think, to be like, is that fucking Hackman?
He's going to make espresso. What about Marty Feldman?
He's okay. He's all right. I don't know. I guess the part where he drops the brain and goes, I meant to do that right, or whatever. It's kind of funny. Break the fourth wall. I don't know. I love how, too, it's like when he's first leading, it's when, Marty Feldman walks all weird. As Igor?
Igor. It's pronounced Igor.
Oh, right. Oh, my God. I set myself up for that. But he's like, walk this way, as in follow me. Mm-hmm. And makes him...
Gag as old as time.
Yeah. And, like, that's like... I was, like, reading something. Like, people were, like, celebrating this. It's like, wow, what an... He left that in the movie. Like, yeah, leave it in the movie. It's amusing. Like...
Well,
like Marty Feldman, I had to fight for it or something. I felt like it's a gag.
The joke being, it's been done so many times before. I think that's the.
I guess I don't know, man.
The walk this way joke. There's one in. Isn't there one in Robin Hood? There's something. Yeah, there's one in Robin Hood. Anyway.
Robin Hood.
I don't want to get ahead of. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But yeah, I mean, look, Cloris Leachman, I think is
barely in it.
Yeah, but she's great.
No, because she gets nothing to do.
Madeline Kahn.
I like Madeline Kahn a lot.
I love Madeline Kahn.
I do too. And
Terry Garr's really fun.
She gets nothing to do. They all do nothing. And then Kenneth Mars comes in and does his arm bit to the point where that's not funny. He has to move his arm like Dr. Strangelove, which I don't even...
I think you hyped this movie up too much in your mind.
It was super hyped up to me.
Again, I think as far as a film, it looks the best. It commits 100% to the visual element of what it's supposed to be. That fucking... black and white, just like it. I just really respect the studio for backing him and not compromising. This movie would have looked terrible in color. It wouldn't have worked. Even if you converted it after the fact.
Dumb.
So yeah, I do think that there is there is kind of a hype around this movie that I don't think is, especially when it's following Blazing Saddles. I know you said don't mention it, but it's a different paced film. It's a different.
I actually like the end when they switch brains and the monster's in bed.
Oh, the nagging wife. Yeah, it's funny.
I'm like, where was this the whole... It's the end. It's like there's a minute left. And I'm like, I laughed out loud, which is rare. I'm like, dude, what the fuck? Where was this the whole movie?
Well, I do know that Gene Wilder had one stipulation for Mel Brooks when they were making this. You can't be in the movie because he didn't want that, like, wink, wink on... Mel Brooks in it, and
good, smart.
Yeah, you needed to commit to the. We talked about this a million ways, like commit to the theming of the world you're in, and they do for the most part. Like you said, there are parts that are so overplayed in these compilations when you watch comedy movie. Like it, you probably had seen so many of the scenes prior to watching this because they're so ingrained in pop culture.
And then when you see them in context, it was so underwhelming. I was just I was underwhelmed. That's what it was. I will definitely revisit Young Frankenstein.
But I could see
tell
how...
you what I won't revisit.
Is that our next film?
The next film we discussed. But yeah, you could see what.
I was just going to say, I could see why, like, having waited this long to finally seeing it, especially, like, I have this relationship now looking back on Robin Hood Men in Tights, which I did not grow up with. I could see how it being introduced to these movies a little bit younger affects your affinity for them.
Absolutely.
And
all the people that grew up on, like, Marx Brothers movies and stuff, they think they're funny, but these, if you grew up on them, you think they're the funniest fucking thing ever.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well...
Is that a good segue? Or do you want to still talk Young Frankenstein?
No, I mean, look, I said my piece with it. I think that it's, as far as Gene Wilder, I think he's just great in it. And, like, he made so many great little choices between the mustache and things that he wanted to do. And
you know what else might be it? There was probably no movie I watched more as a kid than his Willy Wonka. And he's, like, his character's so fucking good in that when he's, like, playing, like, he's, like, really confident and in control in that movie.
Right.
And so when I see him play, like, the screeching loser in Producers, or, he
plays that in Bonnie and Clyde too. He plays kind of like a loser.
He does, but it's a different performance. It's a different film. But
his first film role.
In this, he's like, he's good. I don't know. I don't want to shit on Gene Wilder too much, but it's just like a little. I think he had an idea and he followed through with it, and good for him. To me, it doesn't really work. But apparently, I'm in the minority on that one.
No,
so.
Look, I'll agree with you on everything except the fact that I think he is 100% the movie rests on his shoulders. I think his performance and the way he carries that character, and everyone else is great, don't get me wrong, but it's such a funny performance, and it's that complete. I was talking to you about everything you want to know about sex, but afraid to ask. His segment in that is so funny because he commits believably that he's in love with a sheep. And it's funny. I was reading in his book too. Like Woody Allen had 3 sentences said to him the entire production. Like you can leave some of these guys to their own devices, and
definitely.
they'll give a good performance. And I think he was one of them. But yeah, also worth mentioning. Young Frankenstein's pretty much the first hit for him too, because Willy Wonka had not done well, and the Producers had not done well. So now,
isn't Blazing Saddles a hit for him?
It is, but I mean, it's not like. It's probably like the first, but I'm saying like,
he's a lead. He's leading.
Right.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But I forgot to mention with Blazing Saddles also begins a partnership with the great John Alvin with his poster art. Which do you I'm sure you would, if you saw half of his posters, you would like them. But they become some of the best elements of these movies, like Blade Runner, kind of like a Drew Struzan type. Like
his stuff's good.
Yeah, and I love the Young Frankenstein poster. I think that's a really cool poster.
It's a great poster.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. You see that, and you're like, oh, this is going to be awesome.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're getting away from awesome. We're gonna touch on.
We're gonna get way far away from awesome.
Silent Movie, which we already touched on. You loathed in every way possible. It seems like.
It's hard. You know what it was? It was hard to focus on the movie too because Mel Brooks' middle finger was an inch from my fucking face the whole time. Dom DeLuise had his fist firmly in my asshole. This movie's awful, man. Just all around, you know what it is? It's a hateful movie. It's filled with hate. Ugh. And it's just radiating off of it. I can tell.
Hate for golf and western.
Contempt for everything. And it's just humorless. But please, let's talk about what fucking shit year was this?
This was 1976.
1976's Silent Movie.
Again, it comes on the heels of Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, which are huge hits. So with watching this movie, again, my first time seeing it, I thought like, okay, Mel Brooks wanted to make a silent movie and the studio mandated that all this cameos and big names get crammed into it. Not the case.
Of course, no.
That was 100% a story choice that they made. It begins the idea with a writer named Ron Clark, who was best known for doing a lot of television writers, Smothers Brothers, The Danny Kaye Show. He wrote a play called Norman, Is That You?, which is about, I think, a man coming to grips with his gay son. It was made into a movie with Red Fox. So, again, a lot of different comedy writing. A lot of these guys...
That alone sounds funny.
Yeah. So that was that was like, it begins with this guy, Ron Clark, and then he brings in some of his writer friends, including Rudy DeLuca, who comes back, another writer's room type guy, and Barry Levinson, young in his career, was also doing this type of writer's room work. So I heard something different about how this movie came to be. So then I dig out this great Three Stooges bio by Michael Fleming, and Mel Brooks has a different take on it then. And I'm going to read from this book. The first documentable attempt to turn the Three Stooges into a feature comedy came courtesy of Mel Brooks, who wanted to make the film with himself, Marty Feldman, and Dom DeLuise. Early on, he felt as he wrote it that it just wouldn't work. Instead, he turned the teaming into the 1976 silent movie. But he says later on, I wanted to be Shemp, Dom to be Curly, and Marty to be Larry, but it was just too hard to do a Three Stooges movie. So I don't know if that's just bullshit or one of those show-busy anecdotes.
Who knows?
But largely, I think that it seems like the whole idea begins with this guy, Ron Clark, who his whole idea is, let's make a silent movie in the 70s. And instead of doing it, because we're going to talk about The Artist a little bit, because that's the next silent movie, mainstream silent movie following this. Yeah, big gap there. But
this movie's so bad, it took about 40 years in between silent features.
But
then guess what? They had to come back with another movie about fucking movies.
What are you talking about?
The Artist is good, but it's another one.
Oh, yeah. You have to tie it into the theming of silence and film. And I agree with you there.
Whatever.
But what I was going to say is there is certainly different things done there. Like The Artist, I think even the title cards in The Artist are beautiful, perfectly done. They're silent style, but updated just enough to visually pop. Here, it's the theming is silent, but making it in 1970s for me just doesn't work. I'm sure there's a way to do it. I just thought they were two kind of different styles that didn't 70s Hollywood and silent movies. I don't know. I just don't. What do you think?
It's ugly.
Yeah,
everything's ugly.
The title cards are brown with white.
I have the first thing I have terrible, flat, boring primary color opening credits. You couldn't do anything there.
Yeah,
it's literally just hey, here's Marty Feldman on brown, on red. There's nothing there. Then the inner titles themselves are this disgusting shit faded brown.
They're pretty ugly. They look like the fucking chocolate river in Willy Wonka. It's that color.
Yes, that's exactly the color. And I'm I'm looking at Safety Last, the Harold Lloyd movie. Phenomenal. The artistry in the inner titles. Maybe we'll get into it later, but this thing, I was like, wow. He's on a rooftop and he's watching his friend run away in the distance from a cop on other rooftops.
Yeah.
His friend is way far away. He's a speck on the screen. He turns and waves, and he's waving. The inner title comes up, and the words are tiny in the center of the screen.
Perfect. He's getting further away.
That's so smart.
There's
this.
One...
You know what this movie does? It gives you brown, the same brown shit fucking color the whole movie. It's just so dumb. I'm like, dude, this is what I'm talking about. Mel Brooks is lazy. We're gonna do brown.
I think that
literally black. Why brown? You'll be stunned if you are a masochist and you want to sit through this fucking movie. You're going to be stunned when these ugly brown inner titles pop up. Go ahead.
Are you done your tantrum there?
I was going to be calm this episode and not freak.
Yeah, no, you're going full George Costanza on this.
Jerry, I didn't like the movie.
Look, it doesn't work. I'll be the first to admit it does not work at all.
Yeah, please give me. I want to.
It is. I at least respect what they were trying to do in the sense that, look, making a silent movie in 1976, kind of ballsy. I don't think it was as hard to get made as it's been made out to be because he was on the top of his game at this point.
He absolutely could have made a silent movie. This
think
movie cost nothing, too, by the way, and it's still made up. It cost $4 million. In 1976, this is what they make for inflation. It's probably 20 fucking million.
Well,
asshole.
You have to see the litany of shit cut out of this movie that I'll go through with you later on.
I'm rolling my eyes. Okay.
There's one sequence in particular that you probably would have broken the television if it had been left in the movie.
Dude, all right, let me flip through my... One, I have to say this. I rarely take notes during a movie. I want to watch a movie.
Yeah, of course.
I try to give it my attention. Sometimes I'll go back and watch it again. I had to get up and get my notebook during this because I'm thinking about too many things.
You'll start writing a diatribe.
And another thing I don't like to do is I don't like to see how much time's left in this. Because then, it's okay, there's 30 minutes left. In your head, you're calculating
You're trying to do it. Yeah, I do it all the time.
So I have here written in my notes, Didn't want to check how much time was left. Pushed it off so much because I had to get my notebook. I was like, I got to get my notebook. Like, I can't. I'm going to pause it. Only halfway through, wanted to cry. I literally, it was like getting fucking punched in the stomach. I was like, oh, I'm only halfway through this? I think a tear came out of my eye.
It's a brisk 87 minutes, not even 90 minutes.
That's what really hurt me.
What point was that? Do you remember?
I don't know. I think one of them was rolling on the ground. Who fucking knows?
Okay.
I'm going to shut up for a minute.
No, I knew this was going to be the case because I was surprised just by how much this movie didn't work. I think that the three leads are visually contrasting enough to be fun. I don't think they play up that physicality enough.
No, they just basically have them all do the same thing.
I think the some of their stuff, like when they're in a hospital, they're all walking together, and like Dom DeLuise is eating the chocolate, and so there's some funny stuff there. It doesn't really,
Here, I'm gonna save everyone a lot of fucking misery. You want to see the funny parts of this movie? Go watch the 90-second trailer. I'm serious. Every bit that maybe I smirked a little at is in the trailer. It's all there.
Well, that's the point of the trailer, isn't it? To send you the best bits.
And they did it. It was concise.
So, let me say this too, because we're going to do a separate episode on some silent movies. Silent movies, the frame rate was usually like, I think 12 to 18 frames per second. It went as low as 12. But that really does add, especially in a comedy, because The Artist, the frame rate is...
Well, I forget exactly what they did in The Artist. They filmed it at...
Well, I'm going to say, as far as when you're doing a mainstream comedy, especially where there's lots of wacky running around and kind of Keystone Cop type stuff, as there is in this movie, when you have those sped up shots just happen, they feel really unnatural and not organic. Whereas in something like Safety Last and The General, the pacing, it always feels that way. And that's why a lot of silent movies are like an hour and some change, barely. Like, they move fast because literally the frame rate was sped up so fast, and it works for the comedy.
Because when they start moving quick,
yes.
just it's natural to when they were walking somewhat slower.
Right.
They had that herky-jerkiness.
Yes.
And that's not in this silent movie at all.
It's very jarring in that it starts to cut to like madcap chase scenes, and they're sped. A lot. 12 Chairs did that too, like we were saying.
Yeah, the sped up Benny Hill. It's awful, dude. It's because not only that, you can tell they're going like, there's a terrible air quote chase scene with Paul Newman and this piece of garbage. Right. And it's like, what are they going?
Supposed to be Steve McQueen, by the way.
2 miles per hour, was it?
Yeah, he turned it down.
Good. Smart. But I have to say this, too. This movie makes the insane, extremely odd choice to have absolutely no sound for long stretches.
It's a very big problem.
It tanks the fucking movie. And it makes the movie feel inert, like it's in a vacuum.
Again, I'm going to refer to this book, the Mel Brooks FAQ, because in Mel Brooks' autobiography, he acts like, I knew music was going to be so important, so I brought in John Morris, who didn't want to add any. John Morris refused any piano. He didn't want to give like that typical piano organ sound, which fine. But according to this,
yeah, you got to give me some insight here. Who made this awful decision?
I don't know, but okay. I was going to say, apparently Mel Brooks wanted to make it a completely silent movie. And someone had to talk him into be like, no, you need some sound for like audience, like the gimmick was it would be completely silent. So I think dumb. I don't know if that's true. This is what this.
Well, I'll tell you what, and it got me. It wasn't intentional because it wasn't home video. But I'm watching this movie and it starts and the three leads come driving up in this stupid car, and there's no sound. So
right.
I'm like I
thought my TV was fucked up.
I'm watching a silent movie. There's no sound. I paused it. I went a little ahead to make sure there was sound. There was. I came back. It's like I'm going to say it felt like 5 minutes.
It's not quite that long. It's about, I would say, a minute and a half.
No sound.
Yeah.
There's nothing. And this happens many times in this movie.
It's a jarring choice. And again, I think that they were trying to do something with it. They were trying to stay fresh. Because you have to understand something, too. At this point in the 70s, silent comedy was being more syndicated than it ever had before. So it is being played to death on television, and it's all going to have that. And we've talked about this last episode when you watched Go West. The soundtrack can make or break a silent movie.
It can drive you nuts.
And it can drive you nuts.
Who was it? Morris, you said, the composer?
And I don't know if it was him or together they arrived at the decision that they needed breaks from the soundtrack. I think that's what they were trying to do.
There were so many things you could have done there.
I understand. But they were trying to maybe they just thought. I think they thought the concept of like silent movies with sound playing throughout is dated and overdone, and I think they were just trying to.
On an experimental level, I can almost get it because, like, imagine a theater, right? A full theater, which I doubt existed for silent movie, but imagine a packed theater, right? And imagine, here's another thing: imagine a funny movie too.
Yeah.
So it's a silent theater, and it's getting filled with laughter. It would be very electric. It would be something where, as if the movie was funny at all.
I think that's what they were going for.
You'd have like a weird. And almost an odd, like, reverb and stuff. And the audience, you'd start to feel it more and you'd laugh more at stupider shit. But you got to put at least one fucking joke in there to get the ball rolling.
You didn't find the pregnant lady lifting the car up in that sequence funny?
No. Okay.
Yeah, I believe that's exactly what they were going for. They wanted, they were hoping, and look, this movie is not that much of a failure. It grosses $36 million on its abysmal budget.
It made a profit.
It got some good reviews. I'll read them later, but yeah, there are a lot of mixed stuff.
Hilarious. This is so funny. We talk about this all the time because they're the most famous, Siskel and Ebert. But and they can be. Some of their writing is very interesting and good. But they were as big as fucking hack idiots as anyone else. I think Ebert gave this 4 stars or something. Like, it's garbage. This movie is just unfathomably bad.
Roger Ebert once again gave the movie 4 out of 4 stars, claiming that the movie made him laugh a lot.
Yeah, he's an idiot. That's dumb. Like, if this movie makes you laugh, honestly, I'd go see a doctor.
Okay,
go see a doctor.
We're gonna. I want to backtrack a little bit and talk about the time this movie was made. So, this movie,
we can agree that the decision to have
it's
long stretches with no sound.
I think you and I looking at that today, in the terms of being so familiar with silent comedy never being silent, because through Blu-rays and DVDs and even screenings, they always, and I love watching silent movies with the soundtrack blasting up. It's a part of the movie. I think back then they had a different relationship with it because home media wasn't a thing. There might have just been some. Do you understand what I'm saying?
It's a bold choice. I'll give them the boldness.
And I think that a lot of the jokes, I'm going to use quotes because Ryan's probably even going to think they be that. It's like you're trying to make silent movie style jokes that work in the 70s. There's a lot of things that just don't line up. And you looking at this in 2022, it's even further removed because of that.
That's a good point.
Yeah. They're not trying to do. It's weird. It's a weird levels of time that are being lost.
Well, it's true. He was trying to do Mel Brooks style hack jokes in a silent where it's like you probably should have done what they did in the silence.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. No,
and
I think that's look. There's
to varying degrees. There's little bits that work here and there.
Yeah. But like I said to Ryan before I went into this, at least we'll have no problem mixing up the character names because virtually everyone in it plays a character with their name, especially the 3 leads. It's Mel Fun
with 2 N's. I saw it's on the license plate of that dumb car they drive around in. Like the whole movie, I was just thinking to myself, I was just going, Mel Fun. It's just like, are we having fun? Yeah, with Mel, me. It's like, shut up with your captain's hat. What an asshole.
Marty Eggs is Marty Feldman, and Dom DeLuise is Dom Bell.
Which I think 2 days ago I was soaping my balls in the shower, and I went, oh, Dom Bell. Dom Bell.
That's the joke, Ryan.
He's a dumbbell.
That's the joke.
There's no joke with Marty Eggs.
Yeah, I guess not. Maybe his eyes are kind of like.
It's got to be the eyes. Yeah.
But
which
by the way,
he could see fine.
Yeah,
perfectly.
Mm-hmm. And also, by the way, Marty Feldman wanted to do more physical stuff in this movie. They wouldn't let him. Like he wanted to do more because he was a very talented physical comic.
He could have.
Yeah.
There's moments where I'm like, why isn't he?
And not only that, like there's moments where they speed up his. And like then it goes back to normal. Like it's just again that pacing wise, you lose a lot of that. His whole joke is kind of like he always goes after like attractive women, and
which is humorous. It is. He's a lecherous.
I mean, that was like Benny Hill's thing, though, right?
Yes,
like
it was a lecherous Benny Hill. So let's just rip off Benny Hill.
Harpo Marx too. A lot of these old. That was the joke.
It's funny, and there's one gag because he's like it's a silent movie, so you don't know what he's saying to these women, and they slap him or whatever, and then there's like sexy nurse towards the end that's like, let's do it,
and they have to go.
Yeah, they have to leave.
There's
Dumb.
I forget the sequence, but they're like this is the type of stuff I would have because in the silent era they didn't know to do this, but Mel Brooks clearly mouths the words "you dirty son of a bitch," and then it just says like I forget what the title.
You
part
rascal.
Said. Yeah,
something like that.
That's the kind of stuff I think in the 70s you should have done more of, like because in the silent era, they didn't really think about that. But here you have an opportunity to craft jokes using the title cards.
I think they do that once.
And they don't really do it again.
No.
But as we were saying, the movie stars these three guys. Mel is a washed-up alcoholic filmmaker, and these two are his associates. It is cut out of the movie how they all apparently got their own intro segment, which is the movie begins, which is the three of them.
Could have used that.
Riding in a car. It's not really established their relationship to each other.
Oh, just three weirdos. Mel fun.
And they have an idea to make a silent film. The whole plot of the movie is the plot of the movie. Like
well, there's the whole Sid Caesar thing too. Because, like, what is it? Big time, big pictures?
Yeah.
Some stupid, like, lazy, not even...
Big Picture Studios.
Yeah, just didn't even think about a joke there. Because we make them big. So Sid Caesar's, like, the head of the studio. And Mel Fun comes in and it's like, hey, I'm going to make a silent movie. And, like, they're getting taken over by this fake Gulf and Western, which was also happening at the time with Paramount. Great satire, Mel. Anyway, so he's like, yeah, I'll give you the money to make this silent movie, but you got to get the biggest stars in Hollywood. That's like the premise, whatever. But there's that one part where Sid Caesar sits in his office chair, and like I don't even get the premise here, but like he falls backwards.
He says slapstick is dead.
Oh, and then he shoots across the room and like slams into the wall.
Yeah,
probably a stuntman, right? So in my head, I came up with this whole scenario where Mel Brooks is directing Sid Caesar, and famously, Mel worked for Sid Caesar as a writer on Sid Caesar's Show of Shows. Sid Caesar. I had to say it a couple more times. But anyway, I was thinking, like, what if Mel got, like, a little revenge, and he's like, all right, Sid, just sit in the chair, and then we're going to slam it against the wall. And I could just see Sid Caesar like, Mel, I'm an old man. I can't do this. He's like, get in the chair, Sid. I found that it was humorous to me.
Okay.
Mel, I'm an old man.
If our listeners aren't familiar with Sid Caesar, which I don't think a lot of, because that was it. He was a television guy, and those shows aren't fondly remembered in younger people. Go YouTube your show of shows. I think it's called This Is Your Story. It's a parody of This Is Your Life. It's so hilarious. If you want to see what that show is about, that's a great way to look into it. And Sid Caesar is captivating, and he's so funny. His reactions, his timing, it's great. And yeah, I think Mel Brooks originally wanted them to go to Hollywood and make movies. He didn't want to, but he's in a couple of Mel Brooks movies, but he never really caught on as a film star. He's in Mad World. Always great. I think he's great in this. One of the few performances in this movie that I really...
He gets to do his stupid eye thing.
Yeah.
Ugh. I like Sid Caesar, but...
So yeah, he's the chief. The studio is on the verge of being bought by Engulf and Devour.
Yes, that's what it was. Fun.
Which is, Gulf and Western. I think was buying Paramount at this point in time. And even Coca-Cola was getting in there. I think they were buying Columbia. I could be wrong.
Probably. Hey, I'm with him on the corporate takeover of the studios, but whatever.
Yeah, they don't really. Yeah. So they're going to make a silent movie, and can we talk about how before they go into this meeting, they're all hugging, or no, it's after he gets out, and we're going to make the movie. They all start hugging each other, and these two old women walk by and point. Clearly, you don't even need a title card. She clearly says fags, and then it comes up on the title card, and it's just kind of like, okay, like.
It's kind of funny.
It's kind of funny. And then it comes back again, one more time.
And it's like, fags.
Yeah. And it's just like, what do you... Also, rule of three. There should be...
There should have been a third one where, like, they did it to her.
Yeah. There needed to be a button on this.
There needed to be a button. Dude, thank you. It would have made two shitty jokes funny.
Well, and this is when I thought in my head, like, all right, gags over stories. When they're driving in the car back from the studio and there's the tailor shop... Where I think that's Harry Ritz plays the guy that comes out.
Dude, that's like, what was going on? Like, there's these weird shots from the car where I'm like,
yeah,
you guys, you can take another take.
Yeah,
like what? The camera's all fucked up and weird.
It's weird. It's a guy comes out of a tailor shop with a shirt that was in the window that was like advertising a tailor, so it's not fully finished. I guess the joke is that's the style. That's what they're going in there for, and then. Like, the next second, they stop in front of an acupuncture store, and a guy comes out with needles on his back, and it's like, there's that Szechuan food one later where the people have smoke coming out of their mouth. It's like, again, it's just...
The thing is, too, like, they might be good gags. The camera is, like, not capturing them.
It's weird, because they're supposed to be, like, they're outside the car. It just, it doesn't work, but...
like, you almost catch it too late. You're like, oh, that was supposed to be a... Okay, right. What's Mel Fun doing?
Mel Fun. But in Gulf and Devour, Harold Gould... and Ron Carey, a couple great actors. I kind of think that their whole boardroom scene is a little funny, where they're slapping each other back and forth.
It's okay. I like it. The last guy sends the slap back. He never takes the slap.
And I like he starts frothing at the mouth. Like there's some funny like. Oh right.
No, I mean it's you know what it is. I have it written here. Like a lot of Mel Brooks gags you can see coming a mile away. The silent format does not help this. That's what I wrote.
But again, is that you as someone in 2022? Like contextually in 1976, it might not have been that way.
I don't give, the 1976 thing is irrelevant in my opinion. It's a movie. It's a silent movie.
I understand.
Make a silent movie.
I understand.
Mel Brooks, let me put it this way: his hacky, lazy shit gets over a lot of times due to dialogue, people stammering over each other and stuff. So when you remove that.
Sure.
You can see it's like, okay, I can see where they're going with this. And I have the jacket bit with the rich guy written here, where it's like, he's like, put my jacket on me. Like the rich guy wants his underling to put his jacket.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, now both our arms are in this sleeve. And
yeah. I mean, that's like.
It goes on forever.
That's like.
It's like, we get it.
Laurel and Hardy 101. Like there's a few scenes that like try to homage stuff like that. It goes on way too long. Like, again, you're in the 70s, so update it. Give us something that like, that twists it. Like,
sure.
There's they're playing Pong at the hospital on the machine. Like, that's modern. Like, do more stuff like that.
Yeah. I was like, it surprised me too. I'm like, oh, they're doing something now.
So yeah, they're Engulf and Devour are planning to take over the studio, and meanwhile, they're on their way to go recruit their first star, who's Burt Reynolds, playing himself. Burt Reynolds is so cool.
I like Burt.
Watching this movie, I'm like, if there's one thing I took away from it, it's like, God damn, Burt Reynolds was cool.
And he was hyperstar back then. Mm-hmm. Like, when this was made, he was huge. Mm-hmm.
And he did it for scale, and he suggested he play an egotistical version of himself.
It's funny. And, the one gag is, like, kind of funny with him in the shower.
It's funny.
And all the hands appear.
The hands are up.
And it's them.
But then, like, it cuts to, like, they've been kicked out of the house, and now he's coming down the steps, and they're in the trench coat thing. Like,
yeah,
it's like that classic bit where there's it's a Stooges bit. There's a lot of Stooges stuff in this movie that's not as good, but one of them is all three of them are under a big coat. But that's the thing. They go to pitch Burt Reynolds this movie. They sneak in the house, and he's lathering up his chest hair in the shower, and then more hands keep coming up and lathering him, and then he screams help, and that's it.
What would have been great at that moment? If it would have been so funny because it would have been so out of place
if the woman was in the bathroom
in his hallway, like she walks past the door and goes, "Fags."
That'd have been great.
And I was like, "Where is it?"
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Mel Brooks has this weird. He doesn't seem to think things through all the way.
I don't think he had the support system of people who were willing to give him constructive criticism. I think everyone at this point in time was like, you're the goose that lays the golden egg, and you're just this is gonna be great. So I think that. He did say he relied a lot on test screenings and things like that. So,
well, then Mel's not that great then.
I think this movie is just it's the fact that they made it a bullshit Hollywood story instead of just a silent movie is dumb. Yeah,
it gives you there's no stakes at all. So the whole thing is there's a lot of shitty dumb cameos from big celebrities, and the whole thing is the three idiots have to go like, hey. Be in our movie, and like they have to trick them and stuff. Meanwhile,
but they don't really though. They just kind of piss them off,
and then at the end they go, "Oh wait, you're Mel Fun, aren't you doing that silent movie?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, of course I am." And they go, "Can I be in it?"
It's really, really dumb.
They all do that.
I know.
It sucks.
Apparently, James Caan, he's the other cameo. He's the next star. He.
Oh, the scene in the trailer is the worst.
He apparently lived in the same neighborhood as Mel Brooks, and they would run into each other jogging, and that's how he asked to be in this movie. Like, people at this point in time wanted to be in Mel Brooks movies. That's the thing.
Well, here's the other thing, too. The movie ends with, this is a true story.
Right.
And it's like, it kind of is. So wait, I wanted to ask you this. Did he ever a drinking problem or anything, right?
No.
Fuck him, then. He's an asshole.
He could have. I don't know. That might have been...
Okay.
I should point out that... the original choice for Mel Fun was going to be
so bad.
Was supposed to be Gene Wilder. He's busy directing his first movie, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother,
which you find quite good.
I think it's fun.
I've never seen it.
But yeah, so there's Madeline Kahn was supposed to be the Bernadette Peters character. She also couldn't do it
awful
because she's in Gene Wilder's movie. So yeah. We're getting
way too ahead of ourselves here.
But yeah, it
was Burt. Oh, and then Jimmy Caan.
James Caan, who is outside of his trailer boxing, just to show that why that is, because they couldn't have him come out of the trailer because it's all fucked up. Right. So they don't want to. They couldn't just have him sitting outside his trailer. So there's a spring broke in his trailer. So it's a very like Marx Brothers Stooges gag where it's like teeter-tottering. But
you can imagine a big spring at the center of the trailer sitting on, and it's just teetering back and forth wherever the weight shifts.
So apparently this scene went on much longer. In the finished cut, it's only melon balls they help themselves to, and there's a bagel, I think, that Dom puts black pepper on.
Yeah.
But there was apparently corn with salt. Everyone had to evenly place their salt. There was all this stuff.
And this is exactly what I said. It's like you get the bit immediately. You see the joke coming, and they don't really... there's nothing more than, hey, the weight's shifting around. Now it's corn. Now it's a grain of salt. Now it's a melon ball. Mel fun.
The lunch in the trailer was filmed but edited to only eating of the melon balls and then DeLuise peppering a piece of bread, forcing him to sneeze. Filmed but cut was everyone eating an ear of corn, only for Feldman to salt his corn heavily, forcing others to do the same to balance out the trailer. To shake off the salty taste, everyone gets a glass of lemonade from a pitcher, and when DeLuise spills some on himself, everyone reluctantly does the same thing to balance out the trailer. So that was the whole gag, like, oh, we all have to do the same thing.
Whereas, like, if you're watching it, it's like, this is the thing with comedies. You have to be willing to have that suspension of disbelief. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching this, and about 7 minutes into this bit, I'm kidding, it's probably not that long, but I'm like, just get out of the just go outside.
Yeah.
Go sit at a fucking table and talk. Like, just get up.
Yeah.
Just get up.
There could have been a better way to explain what was happening. Like, either it was driving or it was moving or something. Like, just to have it like, oh, spring's broken. Like you're saying, like, no, let's go outside and just talk out here.
They were outside already.
And it's not shot in a clever and inventive way to disguise why they couldn't go outside, or it's
you're watching actors really fake it. In the sense, it's like,
it's that mugging type.
Yes, dude. And it's like, all right, guys, we get it. We understand. Fuck.
The next two cameos, I don't even want to touch on because they're so gross, but the one's Liza Minnelli.
So I didn't realize this. I'm not a huge Liza fan or anything.
No, you're not her typical demographic.
But it's like I didn't really understand that she was like a dancer. That was her thing. So to not have her dance at all was very... I guess like
that was her stipulation. She just wanted to sit in a chair the whole scene, probably.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I think it was more like, hey, this person's known for singing. We're not going to have him sing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's a fucking awful scene. Go, please.
Yeah.
You should touch on it. It's terrible.
I'm not a huge Liza fan. The only movie like I've ever really seen her in is Arthur, and I think she's like like I don't know. I think she's not like. She's supposed to be playing like this down on her luck, like every girl, but it's Liza Minnelli. It doesn't really work,
right?
Especially when your father is Morty Seinfeld.
I want to watch Cabaret.
Probably works.
Bob Fosse only made like 4 or 5 movies.
I think so.
I
Yeah,
heard they're good.
Yeah, they probably, and she's probably good in that type of role. But like,
I watched that "Money Makes the World Go Round" sequence. She's great in that.
And that's what I'm saying, though. If you're going to use her. Like, have her do what she's good at doing.
That's the joke.
I know, but
can you set this up a little? She's in the commissary.
I guess she's shooting some kind of like
Big
medieval
Dick Studio
film,
or whatever the fuck.
Which apparently pissed everyone off because they actually shot in the commissary, so no one could eat in there for like a few days.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's kind of like harkens back to that great Blazing Saddles commissary gag where like it's not the real commissary, but you have like Hitler eating with like one of the Roman soldiers, like, oh, I got 3 more days left in the.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like that's a funny joke.
It's
Here it's just like. They have to dress up like knights to get close to her because they would assume she's working on the movie, but then she finds out it's them anyway, and so I'll do the movie.
Is an insanely long sequence of them bumbling.
Yeah.
We're going to sit at the table.
I don't even think it's them.
Dude, that's the other thing. I think I thought about that, and I'm like, if it's not even them.
It's because they have the masks down on these suits of armor. I don't think that was a Mel call. I think that was like the studio for insurance reasons. Is like that's usually the case. Like
whatever. It doesn't even matter if they didn't have the helmets on,
right?
Because it
just doesn't work. Yeah,
they're just bumbling into each other, knocking over.
And that's the thing. Like you have to understand about silent comedy and when we're going to talk about later with those 3 we watched, you have to have that type of talented personality that's experienced at this type of work to make it work. The fact that they did this, you look at something like Mr. Bean, or you look at like people who do physical comedy today, they're masters at it. Like the people who are well known for it, even, I know Jim Carrey's an acquired taste, but like good physical comic.
Oh, sure.
And
it's undeniable.
These guys, I mean, Marty Feldman I think was great, but like they weren't physical comics.
Mel Brooks certainly wasn't.
No.
Tom DeLuise looked funny. Is that physical comedy? Kind of.
I just don't think the movie gives him enough to do.
One of the Knights seems to be trying a little harder, and it makes me think
it's most likely Marty Feldman.
in there.
Yeah, because They cite that the reason he had, I guess he got food poisoning on his last movie, then had a heart attack. But they say like
he ate some rotten pussy. He is a lecherous guy.
Yeah.
It's one of the few bright spots.
That's fucking funny. Yeah. Friend of the Hats Off work I do, Alan Spencer, does a couple commentaries on like solo Marty Feldman movies, and he sings their praises. So I might check. He directed a couple movies too, Marty.
Dude, Marty Feldman's funny. His voice is funny. Even it's obviously his face, whatever, the eyes. But I like his voice. That rotten there, yeah. Come on, sit on me lap, love.
Yeah, it's great.
It's hilarious. Wish it was in the movie. But yeah, so they do this.
So yeah, they realize
stress. They are literally at certain points just like standing and bumping, and like they're not doing anything. And everyone's silently standing around like, oh, what's this kerfuffle happening in the commissary?
Here's the other thing, where you have this really ambitious, I'll say it in that way, an ambitious concept, but then instead of having like just someone watching everything as the director, he's also in the scene. So he really should have taken a step back for this and been like, because if this was just like not a silent movie about three guys trying to make a movie, I'll put myself in it, it'll be fine. But like the fact that you're doing a silent movie and no one is really watching, as the director, you can't really, even Keaton and Chaplin and Lloyd had uncredited co-directors and just people trusted to watch behind the scenes. Like,
I don't know who the assistant director was on this or anything, but it doesn't matter.
No, but it's just you.
I know what you're saying. Yeah. Totally. I totally get what you're saying.
So then there's this scene where
it's like you got the two Mels. One can direct himself,
right?
Gibson. The other can't, Brooks. So there you go.
And they both have different feelings on the Jews.
You might be right.
In this Mel Brooks book I keep referring to, in each chapter for his movies, there's a special category for Hitler references. Just, because that's so common in his... none in this. But...
yeah, there really weren't.
So after they get Liza Minnelli to star somehow by bumbling into her, then there's this nightclub scene, which they recruit Anne Bancroft, who is...
Oh, this is horrendous.
Yeah, this is the worst scene in the movie.
I think this is the low point of the film.
It's gross.
It's obscene.
Yeah.
You're right. This is where
Your face was just so serious, like,
because this is where I'm like, gross. This movie is hateful.
It's gross.
It's awful.
It's like nepotism, and it's really gross.
No problem with Anne Bancroft.
I don't either
whatsoever. But honestly, I lost respect for her after seeing this. I'm like, whoa, what is this?
It's weird, and it's like, I remember like Cohen O'Brien on one of his interviewing Mel Brooks was like, I just need to ask you, how the hell did you get Anne Bancroft to marry you? Like, because beautiful woman, like really talented, great actress, and she just feels so out of place here, and it's just like such a big wink that like I'm actually married to Mel Brooks, and it's like I don't want to see this in this movie.
And they play her up as like she's like
this
Jane Mansfield or something almost.
This like vixen, and it's just like
very at the top of Hollywood.
There's like again,
all her little beaux want to light her cigarette at the same time. Kind of funny gag.
I just don't think it works.
By the way, all her four little boy toys, they couldn't look like the fucking most disgusting sleazeballs that came out of the valley in Hollywood in 1976. They look awful. That's kind of funny.
Oh, I think he like intentionally like there might be stuff that like the audience missed, but I think that like that's an intentional Mel Brooks decision. He did like
No, I think those men were considered handsome at the time, dude.
I don't know.
Dude, it looks like like John Holmes rejects. Like they are so disgusting. It's great.
Well, again, it starts kind of fun. Like they're disguised as dancers. What do you call them? Like flamenco?
Yeah, kind of.
Type dancers. Mariachi. I don't know.
Yeah, mariachi.
But like, it just becomes this big dance sequence with Anne Bancroft, who then like starts crossing her eyes in goofy ways, and it's just like, all right, what am I watching here?
And they're there to ask her to be in the stupid
movie. Which she agrees.
Yeah, this is the movie, by the way.
Yeah.
They go from one dickhead to the next.
It's kind of like the Muppet movie, just without like.
I don't even remember. I don't know.
It's like they go around collecting all the Muppets, the Blues Brothers, things like that. Where
but
it's
the
like,
Muppets were cool.
Yeah,
and the Blues Brothers were cool.
And the cameos were.
Mel Fun is a piece of shit.
And then somehow the chief ends up in the hospital, which they don't really ever. There's this gag where like newspapers keep being thrown on what's his name.
I have this written down. This is why I hate this movie. The newspapers, it does the classic.
The great Liam Dunn, who's also the preacher in Blazing Saddles. That's who plays the newspaper man.
Oh, that stupid bit. Yeah, another hateful bit. just abusing this newsman with no payoff.
Yeah.
But the newspapers, you see the newspaper on the screen. It's got the headline, Mel Fun gets another big star. There's no jokey headlines in the newspaper, with the exception of the newsmen keep throwing the big stack of papers on the newsstand guy, the old man. And that eventually makes it into the paper. But everything else, I paused it each time. It's like, crop report, dim.
Yeah, there's not even any jokes on that.
What the fuck? Really? You could have put anything in there. Dom Bell gets hemorrhoid. Anything, dude.
So here's...
Oh, my God.
I think that this was 100%... Because, again, I was ready to blame the studio. I think, like, their logic was, well, it's a silent movie. It'll be hard to get people involved. Like, let's, like, put these little vignettes where there's, like, big stars, and it'll be, like, a variety show type thing. And it just doesn't work. It's just not good. It's not funny. It drags the whole concept of the movie into the toilet. So, yeah, the chief is somehow in the hospital.
This is the Sid Caesar character.
The Sid Caesar character. Which, by the way, we didn't... Yeah, he somehow ends up in the hospital, and they're coming to visit him, and Dom DeLuise is fat, so he eats chocolate. That's the joke. Like, but, yeah, they decide to call Marceau.
He was big, I think, at the time, or was big...
I don't think he was a film star, though, right? I mean, I think he was mostly on the stage and, like, comic type.
Yeah. Mimes suck.
I'm not a fan.
I'm not a fan. And I didn't care for...
He gets the one spoken line of dialogue in the movie. Yeah.
It's kind of funny. Actually, someone does turn him down then.
Yeah.
The mime.
And apparently, I didn't see this on the DVD, there's language options because you can... Even though that word's the same and pretty much...
It's kind of funny.
Yeah. I was telling Ryan beforehand, there is a novelization because they were making novelizations of everything, and apparently it was like flip book. So you would
right, yeah.
Because you that one time, remember you found that used Laurel and Hardy book for me, and you were like, "Look at this, what is this?" And
yeah,
it's
I didn't know what it was.
It's just pictures of their movies, like almost like a flip book. And back in the day, I guess when films weren't commercially available, you would have to buy a book and go, "Oh, I remember seeing this in the theater in 1931."
It's like frame by frame. It was so weird, but it made when you said that, I'm like, "Oh, duh, that makes perfect sense."
So also at the hospital, like I said, there's that fun bit where they play Pong on one of the machines, only because it's inventive and it ties into the present age.
Is this where the nurse is reading the book? The book is My Filthy Dreams.
Oh, yes.
Like, I was like, that kind of got a smirk out of me. I'm like, oh, that's funny. Title, I guess.
Then it's ruined because Paul Newman gets in a wheelchair chase with them, which, again, was supposed to be Steve McQueen, but I guess he didn't want to do it. He wanted nothing to do with it.
I love in my notes I have, oh, boy, here comes Marcel Marceau. Like, I'm so thrilled that they got Marceau.
Well, then, again, now we're going to get back into that speeding up thing. That's the thing in the wheelchair chase. It's like, let's speed it up real quick, and it'll make it funny. And it doesn't work. It's three guys zipping around on wheelchairs for way too long. And they could have done something so more inventive with that. The fact that, like, Paul Newman is just outside the hospital with his race car in a wheelchair with a broken leg. It's like, wait, what? Why is the race car there?
Dude, I'm with you, buddy. This movie's dog shit. And it's insulting to you because it will do things like that to you.
But then, you get great scenes like the two German Shepherd mix up. The blind man gets pulled away by one.
It's like Charlie Callis, too, is the blind man.
There is some great little, like, I talked about Harry Ritz is the one guy that comes out of the teller shop. Chuck McCann. A lot of great, like, bit comedy voice actors type people. Henny Youngman, I think that's funny with the fly in my soup with the giant fly.
It was a moment where I said to myself, I'm like, if that's actually Henny Youngman and I recognized him, man, what's wrong with me? And it was Henny Youngman, and I recognized him.
You read that comedian's book, and you're
maybe take my life, please.
I was doing that. I recognized Lou Jacoby. I was like, who the fuck am I to recognize Lou Jacoby?
That's what I'm saying.
So it gets like a little Blazing Saddles-esque where Engulf and Devour try to get this nightclub sensation, Vilma, who's played by Bernadette Peters, to seduce Mel Fun. But of course she actually ends up falling for him, and he goes back to drinking and ends up... I've never really seen Bernadette Peters in much, but she is not good in this.
She's terrible in
this.
Yeah. She's okay. She's fine, but she's a Broadway person. She's a singer, but
yeah.
She's so bad in this.
her whole attempt is to lure him to drink again to make the movie not happen, because that's another stupid thing. Like, why is the silent movie going to save the studio? Like, they don't address how no one would want to,
because of all the stars. That's it.
I guess
people used to want to see movie stars used to be interesting and, like, you know, beautiful.
Oh,
and
I know.
Not heaps of dog shit on Twitter telling me that I'm bad.
That's why I said Burt Reynolds is so cool. Burt Reynolds wouldn't have fucked around with Twitter.
No.
And he just, I don't know. He was a great talk show guest, like real, you know. Fuck it. Anyway, so he ends up falling off the wagon. Is that the correct way to say it?
You know what's so funny? It's
yeah, you fall off the wagon.
off the wagon.
Yeah. And there's a couple funny gags where, like, he picks up Marty because he's holding the bottle and he's, you know, lifts him up.
And
then, you know, you have your little winos at Skid Row type of thing.
That's what they're all like. Because what happens is the two other idiots, Dom Bell and Marty, find out that she's like a spy or whatever, and they tell him, and he freaks out. And
right.
Did you already say all this? I just
no, you're clarifying it.
All right. Yeah, and then he it's like, I'm going back to the bottle, and I think that's another dumb sped up scene where they're running around tables and stuff. Dreadful
but yeah,
stuff.
then she ends up actually falling for him, so they're able to take him out of the dark place he's in. And I wanted to ask you this too, because I had just watched one of our favorite movies, Broadway Danny Rose. I watched it recently, and there's that great scene where he has to sober up the singer, and in this they have to sober up Mel Funn. And I was like,
I forgot how good that guy was.
Oh,
it's the only movie he's been in.
And he was like perfect because he plays washed up like really well. But anyway, in this they have to sober him up, walk him around. Have you ever had to sober anyone up or like get sober real quick like that? I feel like it's impossible.
It's a coffee doesn't work.
Yeah,
it don't work like that. No.
Yeah,
you have to sleep.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah, that's what like. Oh, we were talking about that Orson Welles commercial outtakes when like he just needed a nap and you know like
you literally just need to sleep.
Yeah,
that shit. I mean, it's a funny gag. Like, drink coffee
or like walk around like here's some hot sauce. That seems like what movies always do.
That does not work.
Yeah, but I feel like that gag is so played in movies where it's like, come on, walk around, sober up. It doesn't work that way.
No,
anyone who's ever been drunk knows. You can't just walk around. Like, it's going to make it worse, probably.
It makes it worse.
Yeah.
It makes it worse.
So this was actually really shocking to me. So have you ever seen the image of Mel Brooks on a crane with the big megaphone? And it's one of these images you see everywhere. And when he dies, every obituary is going to have this image. And apparently, to your relief, you might add, they show the shooting of the silent movie, and that whole portion was cut. That's why you always see in promotional images, Mel Brooks is on a crane, and he's got one of them old-fashioned megaphones. So they don't do that here. The movie just gets filmed. You know, isn't that, like, pacing-wise, it's so weird. They go through all the trouble to assemble all these people.
It's the biggest, it's such a, as I said, it's a fuck you to the audience. We're getting way ahead, but they don't, the movie... And they have a crazy turnaround too. They have to make the movie in like 2 weeks, and another shitty newspaper comes back with no jokes on it. Amazing, Mel Funn completes silent movie, big hit, and then they have a parade or something.
Right.
Yeah, fuck you, man. I don't get to see 1 second of the silent movie
they're building up to. The biggest sequence cut from the film shows Brooks shooting his movie within the film. This included him on a camera crane shouting, "Lights, camera, action, no sound." A scene from the silent movie being made was to have all the superstars in swimsuits doing an Esther Williams-like production number as they lined up side by side in a pool and then dived in one by one. Brooks was then to look down and say, "Good, it's going to work. Now let's try it with water."
Yeah, okay, like that
would have been kind of funny, seeing like Burt Reynolds and them doing like a Busby Berkeley type.
At least you'd have that.
Yeah.
You got an image. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like exactly like you said, like it's something.
Yeah, because it just the whole point of the movie is that they're making this movie, and then it's just completed, and then they're at the premiere where the only print of it gets stolen by Engulf and Devour, leads to another Keystone Cop style chase scene with cars, and it's just there's so much going on. It's so messy. There's a couple like good like verbal like signage gags that are in like.
I wanted to ask you this one. I'm like, what is this? It's when they're at the Hotel Sleaze, spelled Sleez. Great, but under that it says featuring Murphy beds, charming to the unsophisticated. What's the joke there?
I just think it was like that was like something in like cheap hotels you would see back in the day.
Why? You took the time to put that on a sign in the movie. Charming to the unsophisticated. Like, is it a reference that I'm
I don't
missing
believe so.
to Murphy bed commercials
not
or
believe
some
so.
shit?
That's why I thought
It's like one of the only good visual gags of the movie.
I
by the way,
had to look up what I was like, were Coke cans just invented or something? Why is there so much? There's a Coke machine that's firing off cans, and that's the whole joke. Is that every time they go to get cans, they fire out, and cans get bubbly when they shake up. Like that's why I thought were cans just invented and they were like topical? Like what's the joke?
I tell you one thing. I know there was an ad campaign where Coke, it's the real thing. And there's you get an ugly brown inner title here where one of them goes, it is the real thing. And I wanted to punch my fucking screen in.
That's a joke because it happened. It's a thing.
And apparently there was way more to this Coke thing. Are you familiar with this?
In the movie itself?
No, like behind the scenes.
Well, I know Coke was getting into the...
Oh, dude, this is so ridiculous if this is the reason they put this Coke shit in here. Anne Bancroft is nominated for an Oscar.
Oh, yes. I've heard
She
this.
can't accept it. She's over, blah, blah, blah. Joan Crawford, I think, accepts it for her.
I think you're right.
And when she does, she takes a dig at Betty Davis, who she had a fucking problem with. So I guess Anne Bancroft's like, what the fuck? You roped me into this? Like your dumb drama with Betty Davis?
And didn't thank Anne Bancroft at all.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It was something like that. Joan Crawford was on the board of Pepsi for years.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Anne Bancroft got into Cokes, and then we're like, we're going to put Coke in the movie as a snub to Anne Bancroft or Joan Crawford. I'm like, you people are fucking nuts, dude. Wasted probably 10 minutes of screen time. I hope you got some money for it. It's fucking garbage, and they go back to
Millions
it
of
another
Americans
point.
have died of diabetes since this film came out.
Thanks, Anne.
So they get the film back. It's a big success. Engulf and Devour loses.
I have something in my notes. It says teeth hurt - grinding them.
Just,
Dude, I must have been.
and I'm sitting there going, Mel fun. That's fun. I like that. Dom Bell. Yeah, it's for everything I hope this movie be. I think that's the same thing with you with Young Frankenstein. What I was hoping it was, and I thought excluding that jarring, completely silent opening, the three of them in a car. That's I'm hack. I like that Three Stooges old school shit.
Sure,
It's
a funny enough image.
They just don't do anything with it.
They do nothing with it.
Yep. There's that a joke where they throw a blueberry pie out of the car, hits a cop. If you're gonna if you have the resources to take what these silent guys did back then and update it and make it crazy and extreme, do it. Go out there. Do you have that Blazing Saddles kind of pie fight, but do something like the car crash in Blues Brothers, but do that with pies. Go all out.
It's a limp movie.
Yeah.
It's limp. It's like a wet towel.
It is.
It just sucks.
It is, and it opens in the summer, and I couldn't find the exact box office numbers. What it opened up against, some of the big hits of the summer, and yeah, I mean, following the huge success of Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, it just does not, do much, and I think it takes his career in a different direction because he starts starring in more of his movies after this. They take on a different, they're more of that. I think Rudy DeLuca and even Ron Clark, a lot of them, they start to be the writers on his movies after this. So I think, honestly, I think that he hit his stride with Blazing Saddles.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to come back and vigorously defend when we get to it, because we're going to disagree on Spaceballs. I'll defend Spaceballs.
Oh, Spaceballs is horrid.
And
it's got three good jokes. And one is the Afro pick in the desert. That's it. That's it.
Especially after seeing this, 12 Chairs, and Robin Hood for the first time, I'm going to defend Life Stinks even more when we get to that episode, because it is not
good. I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen Life Stinks, High Anxiety, and honestly, I've never fully seen History of the World. So I got a couple to watch. Dracula Dead in Love, and it's,
I think we'll do that for the next Patreon show.
And I will hold off on that.
But that's not going to be, we're not doing that next. That's going to be off for a while.
Way down the line. I got a couple weird connections with this silent movie. It's really funny. One little gag I liked was Sid Caesar. He smokes 2 cigars at once. And I don't think you've seen Blue Velvet, but Frank Booth, Dennis Hopper's lunatic character in that, I'm pretty sure at one point it's either him or another one of the nutcases in that movie. They're just smoking 2 cigarettes at once, and it's not acknowledged by. It's fucking hilarious, and you immediately go, this person's nuts. I was trying to think. I'm like, this is the worst movie I've ever seen. And I was trying to think, what else is two popped out at me that are the worst movies I've ever seen, and unfortunately they're comedies. I feel it's a bigger sin when you're a shitter.
Yeah, an unfunny comedy.
The first is Sasha Baron Cohen's The Dictator.
Okay, never seen it.
I saw it in theaters. It was one of the most, like, you just felt like, I think maybe there was 3 other people in the theater. I caught a matinee. I like to catch those.
You and 2 senior citizens.
And it was just joyless. Just all recycled horse shit. It's lazy. It's not funny. It's
John
awful.
C. Reilly phoned it in.
Was he in that?
I think he is.
Everyone's bad.
Yeah.
It's a bad. No one remembers it. Another piece of garbage that made one of the worst movies I've ever seen is This Is 40 by Judd Apatow.
I can't believe you sat through that.
I can't believe I did either, dude.
Yeah.
It's so fucking long. It's so bad. It's another insulting movie. Like, aren't we great?
One of those nepotism.
Aren't we awesome?
Yeah.
Isn't it great how, like, hey, don't you want to see my kids dance?
I'm so glad that fucking Bubble. Everyone hates it. The Bubble, that movie he made.
Oh, I already forgot about it.
Yeah. It's like the whole thing. Like, I'll put my family in it, and we'll talk about the hardships celebrities face during a pandemic. It's like,
to my opinion, like, people like that are toast.
So not a recommend on the Silent Movie for you.
Watch the trailer.
And any of the movies we talked about in association with it. Obviously, I think you said Blazing Saddles is the clear standout as terms as the best movie.
It holds up.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of the best movies ever made. It's so funny, and it hits everyone. No, it's a movie that you miss. You don't know you miss because it hasn't been made in a long, long time. Black Dynamite's probably the closest I can think. That just is a funny. It's not even like offensive necessarily. Like Blazing Saddles gets like that offensive label.
Sure.
They use offensive words, but the movie itself is kind of tame.
Yeah, it's not very mean-spirited.
No, it's like, and that's what Mel Brooks. He's never been a mean-spirited guy, and maybe that's my problem. Is that he deflects a little bit, where I think you should twist the knife. He pulls it out and goes,
"Oh yeah,
no, let me get
agree.
you a Band-Aid."
I agree completely, especially after reading his biography, his autobiography, and I love the guy. Look, I've had the good fortune to meet him a couple times. He's a sweetheart.
I'm shitting on his movie, some of them.
Yeah,
I don't want to shit on him. He seems like a nice guy, like you said.
But I think that's it. I think when you're just a nice guy, you kind of lose your edge, and people are afraid to tell you when something's not working.
Yeah.
And it's clearly the case. What we're going to talk about on Sidetracks on our Patreon at patreon.com/almostcultclassics, which is Robin Hood Men in Tights, which we're going to get to. But yeah, I think that, and I think that's why at least he knew to stop after a certain point, regardless of being, getting up there in age. I think he could have still went going. Clint Eastwood's still getting on a horse and doing that type of shit.
Sure. But
I think he knew that the moment passed and it was time to let the next generation do it, because you have to understand too, like when Airplane came out, like a lot of people started to do this comedy stuff differently, like with Let's Play It Straight, and I think he tried to do that with Dracula Dead and Loving It. I think there's a lot of that. He's trying to make basically a Zucker Brothers comedy there, and I just think he knew then it's like, all right, it's not for me anymore, time to get out. And I'm glad he did, because I think he was only hurting himself by keeping making these movies, and the projects he's done since, stuff like Spaceballs, the animated series, which was an enormous flop, hated universally. Even like the Young Frankenstein musical didn't do that well, but the Producer's musical, I'm glad he got some accolades with that. Yeah, he's still like in comedy film, just having those first 3, excluding 12 Chairs. First 4 excluding 12 Chairs, which is the Producer's Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles. Those are pretty big movies for...
I can't say they're not.
Yeah.
They are.
So the fact is that he was able to hit 3 out of the park like that. He has my respect. And even though this didn't work, I recommend checking out some of the Brooks Films movies, because there's a lot of weird little movies in that Fatso I've always been fond of, To Be or Not to Be, a remake of the original.
Which I saw the original years ago. It was really good.
The original is phenomenal. But he does, a fun little take on it. And The Elephant Man.
Yeah.
Which is... That couldn't be further from what he's about.
Yeah.
My Favorite Year. Yeah, a lot of little weird films like that I recommend checking out. But yeah, this one just not the best from Mel, and it's not very fun.
Oh, no. It lacks a lot of fun. I
Mel.
felt like a real Dom Bell after watching it. It sucks.
But yeah, we're gonna keep these mics rolling for Patreon, and then we're gonna do an episode on just some silent movies, which I'm really excited about, because those are I have a lot to say there. Next time on the podcast, we're gonna talk about a movie that's kind of ties into a really classic comedy, Fierce Creatures, which is an idea I like. Like, let's make a sequel to A Fish Called Wanda just in like cast alone. Like,
Right.
and as far as I remember, they all play different characters
I
from
think so.
A Fish Called Wanda, like that type of thing. So I love Cleese. I love the Pythons. So that'll be fun. Maybe we'll check out a couple of the other like not quite Monty Python movies, but like similar.
Well, it's been years, so I'll rewatch them.
Cool. And
same
we're gonna
with
do Fierce Creatures, and then maybe on Patreon we'll talk about A Fish Called Wanda, which I've always loved.
Kevin Kline. I mean, he's
Oscar winner for that?
Yeah,
I think, right?
yeah, and probably well deserved. I
Yeah.
mean, because he's perfect in that movie.
Yeah. So that's what we'll be doing next time on the show. As always, keep your suggestions coming in. We are on Patreon, and we are both on Twitter. I'm at Joe Armoni.
I'm at Ryan Lancello.
And we will see you next time.
Thanks for listening.